is the most exciting Monday because our football players are back at school. Yay! We have county tournaments for our volleyball team this week. Lots of exciting things going on, but mostly you get to take your first real science test. Yay! Everybody is so excited about that. I know. The good news for you is you will take your test on Wednesday, so I expect you to use all available resources, except for what? Except for people. People are not considered appropriate available resources. However, Google, your notebook, your YouTube videos, those are all acceptable resources. Plus, any assignments you've turned into me through the last couple of weeks are also all available resources. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through our notebooks. You have made a copy of your notebook. If you clicked on the link for your assignment to get your notebook today, it forced you to make a copy. So now you can highlight, you can add text boxes to make notes, all of that stuff you can do today. So we are going to start on page 2. Remember this proficiency scale? I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. If you are not proficient in the vocabulary, that is your first priority that you will do after we are finished with these notes today, is study that Quizlet set and make sure you know all of those words. If you don't know the words, that's going to make your test take a whole lot longer because you're going to have to look up the words. All right, so first of all, can you argue using evidence to support claims that something is living or non-living? We did this in our lawnmower activity, if you remember way back when we did that. And we went through the characteristics of living things. Something to be alive has to meet all of those characteristics. Can you argue using evidence to support the claims that all living things are made of cells? We have talked about cells and how the basic unit of all living things is at least one complete cell. Can you argue using evidence to support claims that the cell is the basic unit of life? That is the second part of the cell theory, which is kind of the same as the first. I can argue using evidence to support claims that cells come from other cells. This is very important, okay? Cells only come from other cells, which is kind of odd because scientists also claim that life came from nothing. So if scientists say that cells only come from other cells, then how in the world could cells have come from nothing? I don't know. Sounds like scientists are contradicting themselves there. Next, I can explain the differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Remember, prokaryotic cells are the weird ones. They're not the cells we have in our body. They're the ones with no nucleus, no mitochondria, none of the fun, sucky thing, endoplasmic reticulum, none of that stuff. They are only bacteria cells. Prokaryotic cells are bacteria cells, which is why they're so easy to kill with antibiotics. Thank goodness for us. Eukaryotic cells are the types of cells that you have in your body and that plants have in them. Can you explain the function of specific cell structures and how each organelle helps to maintain a stable environment? Hint, 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 we created a graphic organizer on this that might be very helpful during your test. And I can compare and contrast structures of plant and animal cells. Again, we created a Venn diagram that does that for you. So these are the things that are open for test questions on your upcoming test. However, I'm a little bit tricky. And the test questions are going to be hard. You're going to have to think. You're going to have to apply what you know. You can't just Google the answers. It's not going to be that simple. So on slide number 3, everybody move to slide number 3. Characteristics of living things. There are a wide variety of living things that exist on our planet, but they all have several characteristics in common. Get your highlighter tool ready. If you don't know what the highlighter tool is, I'm trying to find it. Maybe under tools? I bet you have to click on the text box. Yes, when you click on the text box, then all of these wonderful things show up. And this right here, highlight color, is your highlighter tool. You may choose any color you want. So highlighter's ready. Living things are composed of one or more cells. Highlight that. Living things are composed of one or more cells. Letter A, living things are composed of one or more cells. That means the cell is the smallest unit that can perform all of life's processes. Cells are surrounded by semi-permeable membranes, which we'll talk about later. They also contain DNA. Highlight that part. They also contain DNA. That is an important part of living things. Why are you not highlighting? There we go. Nope, that's not what I want to highlight. There we go. Why is it not highlighting? Is yours highlighting, guys?
Yes.
Ooh! I think you have to click on the highlighter every time and then when you click on the box, click on the text and it'll put a blue box around it and then the highlighting tool will show up. All right. I give up trying to highlight that line. Letter B, living things can sense and respond to changes in their environment called stimuli. If you're having trouble with the highlighter, you can also use the underline function or the bold function, anything to make that text stand out. I know what it is. You have to highlight it with your cursor first and then go up and click the highlighting thing. That's the problem I'm having. Highlight it first, then go and click what color you want it highlighted. All right, letter B, we're highlighting that whole sentence. Living things can sense and respond to changes in their environment called stimuli. Stimuli is one of those science words that you need to know. And you need to understand what some of those stimuli are. For instance, if you were in class the day we talked about this, we all closed our eyes really, really tight. And then while staring into somebody else's eyes, we open them up to see that when you open your eyes, your pupils go from being really, really big to teeny, teeny, tiny because they're responding to the stimuli of the light in the room. Your pupils control how much light comes in your eyes. And when it's dark, it needs all the light it can get. So those pupils open up very big. When it is light outside, it doesn't need as much light, so those pupils shrink down smaller. That is a response to stimuli. If you've ever been walking through the woods and you touch those cool fern plants that respond to the stimuli of your touch and their leaves kind of curl up when you touch them, pretty cool. We also talked about those carnivorous plants that like to eat flies and other bugs, and they sit there, and when the bug lands in them, they go and close up so the bug cannot get out. And then they have juices inside the plant that dissolve the bug. Very awesome. All right. Letter B, a stimulus is anything that causes a reaction or a change in an organism. Go ahead and highlight that. A stimulus is anything that causes a reaction or a change in an organism. You need to know that stimuli is just the plural word for stimulus, and it gives some examples there that might be useful to you, such as gravity, heat, chemicals, light, sound, and hunger. By the way, have you heard we're having hot dogs for lunch today? Yes! And number 3, organisms need to react to their environment to help maintain homeostasis. There's absolutely going to be a question about homeostasis. So highlight that word and the definition there. A constant, stable, internal environment. So your body maintains a certain temperature all of the time. What is your body temperature supposed to be? 98.6. 98.6 is the standard average temperature. If you have a fever of 99.5, which is less than 1 degree difference, you can tell, can't you? When you're running a fever, you know in your body that you don't feel well. Less than 1 degree difference in temperature, and your body knows it. If the temperature in this room changes 1 degree, you don't even notice. But your body temperature changes to 1 degree, and it is completely obvious to you. No question about it, right? So your body does things to maintain that temperature. If it drops cooler, you start shivering, which causes everything in your body to move, which creates heat. Okay? If it gets higher, your body sends out antibodies to kill whatever's attacking you, and you get kind of clammy and achy, so you're not moving around, so you're resting your body so that your white blood cells can kill whatever's attacking you. Your body maintains this. It maintains how much water you have. If you drink a lot, you pee a lot, right? Okay? That's an important thing, how much water you have in your body. There are many, many other things that your body does to maintain that homeostasis, that balance of all the things in your body. Letter C, living things can reproduce. This is a very important one that will become extra important to you either later on this week or early next week. Okay. We will do an activity in class where this one right here will be pretty important. All right, it does talk about types of reproduction there that I don't think we really talked about, so I do want to mention these because your parents kind of freak out when they see these words, okay? So there are 2 ways an organism can reproduce. There is asexual and sexual reproduction. That second one does not necessarily mean what you think it means, okay? Because the dandelions that grow in your front yard reproduce sexually, okay? It doesn't mean that one dandelion starts flirting with another dandelion and says, hey, you're looking pretty cute today. All right, that's not what that means, okay? What that means is it requires DNA from 2 different organisms in order for that organism to reproduce. That is sexual reproduction. So get your minds out of the gutter because that's not what it means, okay? Asexual reproduction means there's only one organism. So bacteria reproduce asexually. They have one cell, and that cell divides into 2 cells. Boom. Asexual reproduction. It just requires one organism, okay? So you do need to know the difference between those 2 types of reproduction. All right, we're on to slide number 4. Living things have DNA. We've already highlighted that once, but I like it so much, we're going to highlight it again. So again, click on your text box so your highlighting tool appears. Remember, DNA is actually deoxyribonucleic acid. That's just a long, sciencey chemical term for what makes up DNA. But DNA is the blueprint to everything that is you. It is this long, stringy molecule, and we'll get into more details about that in future units, that tells your body exactly what you're going to look like, as well as other pieces and parts of your body, how things are going to work, whether you are lactose intolerant or not. All kinds of cool things about you are in that secret code called DNA, and all living things have DNA. Also, go on down to letter E. Living things use energy. Y'all touched on this when we were talking about that lawnmower, because that lawnmower also uses fuel, right? I am so thankful that the way that we get energy is through eating things like hot dogs and sugar, right? Thank goodness we get to eat stuff to get our energy. Not all living things get to do that, and that is like a great fun part of my day every time I get to eat. But all living things do use energy. Going down to letter F. Living things grow and develop. Remember, growth and develop are 2 different things. Growth is just a bigger part of you. Development means that you change, and I think we all agreed when we talked about this that we are thankful that we both grow and develop. Because right now, close your eyes. I want you to think about your baby pictures, what you looked like when you were a cute little baby. My niece was had her baby dedication at church this week, and she's got these big old chubby cheeks and this big old head on this little bitty body and little short nubby fingers. Imagine if, when she was your age, she was just a bigger version of her. She'd have a teeny tiny button nose and this big old fat head with big old fat cheeks. Okay, fat cheeks are really cute on babies, but not so much on grown-ups, right? So imagine a bigger version without anything changing except you grow bigger and maybe grow some hair and some teeth of you when you were a baby. That would be pretty funny, right? That would not look the way we think we should look. So thank goodness we both grow and develop. All righty, next page. Look, we're just slinging on through these things. There are 3 parts to the cell theory. I strongly suggest you take time to memorize them. Normally, under normal circumstances, that would have been one of your tests, is to tell me the 3 parts of the cell theory. But let's be real, you could just Google that and tell me if you happen to be at home on that day. So we skipped that test this year, but you need to know there are 3 parts of the cell theory. Okay? Cells are the basic unit of life. Of course, your notes continue to say which can perform all of life's functions, and that's important, but I think that is understood in the term cells are the basic unit of life. Okay, part 2. All living organisms are composed of 1 or more cell. If you don't have a complete cell, you do not have a living organism. However, you can have just 1 complete cell to be considered a living organism. And then part 3, all cells come from pre-existing cells. Cells can only come from other cells. We can't make them in a lab. Okay, you can't make a cell in a lab. Cells only come from other cells. And that's where that wonderful, magical DNA comes in. All right, let's look at page 6. We don't have anything to highlight here. You just have that video to watch about the cell theory. Wouldn't be bad to go back and review that, maybe tonight at home. Page 7. Prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells. You got to know the difference, okay? So prokaryotic, pro means before, kary means nucleus. So this was like before a regular nucleus. Again, click on the text so your text box comes up and you have your highlighting tool. Prokaryotic cells are cells that do not have a nucleus or other membrane organelles. Also, look at letter C. This is bacteria. You need to know that bacteria are prokaryotic cells. You also need to know that we can kill bacteria using antibiotics because they do not have a nucleus. So the antibiotics can get straight to the DNA because that nuclear membrane is not that second, it doesn't have that second line of protection around the DNA. We talked about that in class. What sickness do people get on a regular basis that is caused by bacteria that is easily cured by antibiotics? Not the flu. The flu is a virus. We talked about it in class. Strep throat. Thank you. Yes, strep throat is caused by the bacteria streptococci, which is little organisms that live in your throat and start growing and multiplying very quickly because they reproduce asexually, so they just divide and happens crazy fast. Makes you feel bad. It makes your throat hurt, but after just a day or 2 of antibiotics, you immediately start feeling better. Those antibiotics dissolve the DNA in the bacteria cells without harming your cells because That nuclear membrane protects your DNA from the antibiotics. Important information. Eukaryotic cells are cells that have a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Highlight letter A there. Cells that have a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Also highlight letter B there. They are plant and animal cells. And FYI, if you didn't know, you are an animal. So you have eukaryotic cells in your body.
Yeah, I did hear that.
There is down below a really cool diagram that compares and contrasts prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. And then now anything and everything there is to know about eukaryotic cells. We're doing great on time, so we are on slide number 8. Again, click on it so you got your highlighting tool ready. The nucleus acts as a control center for all activities performed by the cell. Highlight the words control center. You need to know that the nucleus is the control center or the boss of the cell. You also need to know letter B, that it stores the genetic material called DNA. You do not ever have to write out the word deoxyribonucleic acid, so don't stress over that. DNA is always appropriate. We're going to move on down to letter F, ribosomes. Ribosomes are in both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. You need to know that, but it's not written in your notes. So this would be a good time to add a text box down here at the bottom and type in ribosomes are in both P-R-O, karyotic, K-A-R-Y-I, no, not Y, just Y, no I, O-T-I-C cells. P-R-O-K-A-R-Y-O-T-I-C cells. And I can tell you've not been doing learning.com using those little index fingers to peck away. You got to learn to type faster than that. And eukaryotic cells, E-U-K-A-R-Y-I-O-T-I-C cells. I-O-T-I-C. Karyotic. Oh, you're right. The I does not belong. I don't know why I keep trying to put an I in there. Eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells both have ribosomes. And what do ribosomes do? They build proteins. They make you. They build you. So under ribosomes, I need you to highlight letter C, site of protein synthesis. Oh, something just happened. There we are. Site of protein synthesis. Remember, to synthesize something means to build or put together. We talked about that when we talked about photosynthesis. So it puts together proteins. Try not to spit when you say that. Good thing I've got my mask on. Puts together proteins. All right, number 9 slide. Oh, my favorite thing to say in the whole wide world, endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum, also known as the sucky thingy at the bank, transports things throughout the cell. So highlight letter B there, packages and transports molecules within the cell. That is important that you know it's inside the cell. It doesn't take things out of the cell.
Hi.
Hello.
What time do you eat lunch?
11:15.
I won't be in my classroom, but
Okay.
lunch is on the back table. And there's all I had was a measuring cup to scoop it out. And there's sandwiches and glass bowls and spoons.
Thank you so much, Miss Chatham.
Plates. So I don't where do you eat? Do you have to eat in your classroom this week?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll work out good.
Perfect.
In the microwave today.
Thank you.
Well, I want to know what you think.
Awesome. I'll let you know. Thanks. Miss Chatham sweetly made me lunch today. She loves me. All right, Golgi apparatus. This is a little different from endoplasmic reticulum because it packages things for shipping out of the cell. So while the endoplasmic reticulum packages things for movement within the cell and transports it within the cell, the Golgi apparatus gets it ready to leave the cell. It's like the UPS store. It packages it all up really nice to make sure that it gets through all of the checkpoints it needs to leave the cell. Lysosomes are kind of like lysol. Lyso means to break apart, which means lysosomes are involved in the breaking down of molecules. They are the recycling center of the cell. All that stuff you do not need anymore, it breaks it down and either reuses those parts or sends them to the Golgi apparatus to ship them out of the cell. Vacuoles are storage structures. Highlight letter A under vacuoles, storage structures. Remember, vacuoles can store either water, food, or waste. Imagine a vacuole full of poop. That would be horrible, but it happens in your body all the time. At least a vacuole full of cellular poop. So, one other thing you need to take note of is letter C and D. Animal cells have several smaller vacuoles. Animal cells have lots of small vacuoles throughout their body that just look like little bubbles. However, plant cells have one large vacuole that provides structure. Remember the limp balloon. If the balloon has no air in it, it's all wilty, just like a plant is wilty when the vacuole is empty. But when you fill up the balloon or fill up the vacuole, those cells stand up nice and strong. Next up, everybody's favorite, the mitochondria. The mitochondria are everyone's favorite because they provide the energy in the cell, just like Alabama Power.
Teachers, please remember that I will be calling you up to the breakdown when in time 01. Math classes will go up to the
Slide 10. Slide 10.
And I will call you when it is time and cleared out of here.
Go ahead.
Please remember to drop your extra
and click and get ready to highlight.
Your favorite teachers.
We are on chloroplasts.
So they have to kiss a pig. We have lots of great pictures up here for you to see.
Send your money to make your favorite teacher kiss a piggy.
Kissing a pig. Thank you.
Okay, chloroplasts. Yay. Site of photosynthesis. What happens during photosynthesis? My favorite thing. Sugar is made. Wonderful, fabulous, tasty, delicious sugar. Chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis. Photo means light, and again, synthesis means to put together. So the plant uses the energy from the sun's light to put together sugar. Take a look at letter D. All the different parts of the chloroplast are some important information you are going to need. The thylakoids are the solar panels where the light enters the chloroplast. The grana are the stacks of thylakoids. So if you got a bunch of thylakoids stacked on each other, that is the grana. So the thylakoids are like the plates. The grana are like the stacks of plates. And then the stroma are kind of the spaces between the thylakoids, and that's where the sugar is made. Next up, cytoplasm. This is another place where you might want to add a text box. And keep in mind that in a diagram of a cell, in a diagram of a cell, in a diagram of a cell, cytoplasm, C-Y-T-O-P-L-A-S-M. Cytoplasm looks like empty space. In a diagram of a cell, cytoplasm looks like empty space, but it's not really empty space. We used to think it was a jelly-like substance, but now we know it's more like spider webs. Pew, pew, pew. Spider webs all throughout the cell that hold the organelles in place. And if they need to move around, that cytoplasm helps move things around within the cell. It provides support and protection to the cell and assists in cell mobility. So highlight letter A and letter B. We're almost finished. Next up, we forgot something about chloroplasts. Anybody in here can tell me what is one other important piece of information about chloroplasts? What kind of cells are chloroplasts in? They are in eukaryotic cells, but are they in all eukaryotic cells? No, they're only in plant cells, which is kind of a lie because they're also in protists and in fungi, but we're not talking about those yet. So when you talk about plant versus animal cells, chloroplasts are found in plant cells. They are not found in animal cells. Sadly, our cells cannot make their own sugar, but thankfully, we can eat the plant sugar and it tastes delicious. The second organelle that is only found in plant cells is our next one up, cell wall. So go ahead and highlight letter A. They're found in plant cells. Cell walls are not found in animal cells. Again, there are other types of cells that they are found in that we might talk about later, but for now we are just talking plant versus animal, and cell walls are in the plant cells. They are not in the animal cells. Moving on down to cell membrane. Cell membrane are in all kinds of cells, prokaryotic cells, eukaryotic cells, plant cells, animal cells, you name it, they got it. The cell membrane is basically that border. It's the balloon around the air. It is that border that holds everything inside and controls what comes in and out of the cell. So, letter A says selectively permeable. Permeable means things can go through it. Selectively means only the things it chooses can go through it. That's an important term. You're going to need to know what it means, so highlight it. And then number 1 under there selects what enters and leaves the cell. And that takes us to nothing because we're finished. I wish you great luck on this test that is coming up. I know you are going to do fabulous. You need to know your notes in order for this test to not take you 5 hours. You need to know your notes. Be familiar with your notebook, where you can find information. Oh yeah, I remember reading about that. And that was right around when we were talking about cell walls. So it's got to be close to there, okay? Or wait, I saw that in one of those videos. I'm going to go back and rewatch it. Use your resources. The test questions are going to be tricky. They're going to be hard. You are going to have to think. You can't just Google the answers to this test, but you can use all of your available resources except Big Brother or Big Sister, because most moms and dads, unless they're in the medical field, don't remember the science stuff anyway, sadly.